Good morning to everybody and welcome to this fourth and final webinar in the initial Policing Tech Forum series. To date, we've been exploring the developments in the ways that policing in the UK is embracing technology to improve its contact with the public and look at the importance of interoperability in achieving this. Today, we'll be focusing on the specific role of artificial intelligence and how its application can assist in helping transform contact management. I'll be facilitating the session and we would welcome questions from yourselves as the webinar progresses. After you've heard from our speakers, they'll join us for a panel discussion as we attempt to answer as many of those questions as we can. We'll hear first from our session sponsor, Content Guru. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Shub Naha. Shub is the Business Development Director for the critical national infrastructure at Content Guru. With many years of experience working alongside police, Shub's expertise has supported organisations looking to deliver exceptional citizen experience and engagement. Welcome to the webinar, Shub, and thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Kevin, and hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be presenting today, talking about AI, the use of AI, sharing our insights and our experience of using AI in the contact center in force control rooms too. So to support the discussion points today, if everyone's okay with that, I'm just going to share a presentation. So let's look at some of the facts here, right? So whether we're looking at policing specific fact, where I say you've got the UK Chief Scientific Advisor saying actually AI is performing tasks equivalent to 1 million hours of policing annually. That's equivalent to 600 officers. That is significant. It's not small. When you're looking at the contact center, for example, 46% of agents are now utilizing AI in the contact center. So again, these are significant, large stats. So clearly, this is really taking off. It's making a difference. And I say the organizations we're speaking to are really quite excited about how AI can complement their way of working. So how do we get the most out of AI? Actually, there are a number of different areas in the force control room, in contact management, where AI can play a part. We're going to touch on some of those over the next few minutes. One is around intelligent self-serve options. So again, do all contact in the control room need to speak to a call handler? Absolutely not. It's understanding the intent of the caller, and based on the intent, then deciding, actually, do they need to speak to a call handler, or can their needs be served by using a self-service tool? There are other examples of where AI can be used. One is around intelligent routing. And again, I'm going to present examples of where and how you would use intelligent routing. Natural language really was one of the first of where AI really started to kind of play its part in contact centers and in force control rooms. And natural language is all about trying to understand the intent. So in the old days, when you were phoning in, calling an organization, you would use the old IVR, you would press 1, 2, 3, 4, but actually it was quite limited in terms of understanding why a person was calling in for. So over time, natural language started to become part of the norm in everyone's everyday life. And more, we started to see these being used in contact centers. So clearly, it's quite established now, and it's being used more and more by organizations to help understand. We then have what we call knowledge management systems. So again, when someone's calling in, having a knowledge management system to help the call handler, to help contact center agents with relevant articles and information that can help to try and solve the problems and the reasons for the customers calling in. We're seeing that becoming really, really quite big. In terms of the use cases of AI, there are many, I say, particularly in the force control rooms.
We'll move on to our next speaker. So I'd like to introduce Dave Jackson. Dave is the Strategic Artificial Intelligence Lead at the NPCC's Digital Public Contact Programme. I believe that's right, Dave, is it?
It is, yes. Thanks, Kevin.
So before retiring as a police officer, David was Chief Superintendent at the Met's Police Service and led the contact, command and control services, including a number of transformational change programs. So welcome to the webinar, Dave, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thanks ever so much, Kevin, and a very good morning to everyone online this morning. It's a real pleasure and honour to speak with you around some of the areas within the Digital Public Contact Programme, which is the national programme within policing for transforming public contact. Some great reflections there from our previous speaker, Shub. Shub and I have known each other for a long time and share very much our thoughts around the opportunities where AI could really add value. It could improve efficiency, it could improve effectiveness, it could improve, most importantly to me, the citizen experience and outcome and their satisfaction. But let's first of all start with what we're doing nationally within the public contact arena. Policing receives about 33 million phone calls a year. It's about 20 million 101 calls and sort of 12.5 million 999 calls every year. That's an awful lot of conversations that are taking place. And to actually quote a poet from the early 1800s, an American poet, "The human voice is the organ of the soul," so said Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And I quite like that because voice is a really important communication mechanism. And in fact, 999, of course, the model for 999 hasn't changed since it was introduced in 1937. A caller who requires help phones 999, speaks to an operator, gets connected through to the relevant emergency services, and then help is provided. We'll come back to that in a short while. But actually, within those 32 million calls a year, we don't do a great deal with a lot of them. About 2/3 of forces don't log within contact systems or command and control systems every single conversation, every single call that comes in, which is absolutely understandable. It's probably not an incident under the national standards of incident recording. It may be for another reason that it doesn't need to be logged. But the challenge with that, of course, is that the details of that conversation have been lost. The only people that know about that conversation are the caller and the call taker that took the call. And in the forces that don't log every single interaction, between 50 and 60% of demand is unlocked. But we're still having to answer every call, and it's still consuming our capacity to be able to do so. And so one of the areas that we are currently working as a proof of concept with West Yorkshire Police is unlocking the value of voice by historically transcribing, as Shub's already described, transcribing the recordings of those calls to understand the totality of that demand. And of course, that's one of the first questions that every force is asked during their HMIC Peel inspections. How well does the force understand the demands that are coming into the organisation? Well, with this technology, with the ability to be able to transcribe and convert that voice recording into a usable digital format is absolutely critical to understand what are our citizens, what are our communities contacting the police about. Before I do, I just want to talk a little bit around the law. Everyone's heard of GDPR, Data Protection Act 2018. A lot of people in policing sometimes forget around the additional requirements under the Law Enforcement Data Principles, or Section 3 of the Data Protection Act 2018. And Section 49 talks about the right not to be subject to automated decision making. That's what the actual law says, but essentially a controller, that's policing, cannot take a significant decision based solely on automated processing unless the decision is required or authorised by law. So in other words, what subsection 1 is saying, we can't make any significant decisions about a person that's made solely on technology and there's no human involved in it at all. Helpfully or unhelpfully goes on to talk about what is significant decision, and it says in indent B, a decision is a significant decision if it significantly affects someone. Not quite sure whether that's being tested, but there we go. So we do have some restrictions on automated decision making, and we have to absolutely bear that in mind in our design of how AI might be deployed across policing.
So I'd now like to move on to our final speaker of the morning, Scot Dunn, Chief Digital Information Officer at Humberside Police. A visionary technologist with a passion for pushing the boundaries of traditional practices, Scot has over 25 years experience within the criminal justice environment. So Scot, welcome. You're very welcome to this morning's thing. Perhaps I can start. I mean, Dave touched on Humberside's involvement with the AI work. Perhaps you can expand on that and tell us a bit more about your experience.
Yep, not a problem, Kevin, and good morning, everyone. Yes, the technology and the human probably on about 95% of occasions came up with the same score. There was never much between the human and the technology. So that was quite encouraging for me. So that was phase one of the trial. There was probably then a good 18 months gap where I scabbled about in the background trying to find funding. And thankfully, DPC came forward with some additional funding, which is the trial or the phase that we're currently in. And the current phase is looking at a number of things. Predominantly, how do we scale this into our entire control room? And how do we scale this to handle all call types that come into the control room? On top of that, we're obviously looking to do searches across RMS, CAD. I would like to be able to try and search firearms licensing database to start getting additional information into the call taker. But that's pretty much in a nutshell the phase we're currently going through.
I think we're all back now. Shub, if I can come to you first, you sort of talked about productivity gains in your presentation, but we've had a question come in from the Home Office, and of course it would have to be around productivity and came to us from the Home Office, but you know, how have you measured productivity?
Yeah, there are a number of ways we can measure. I'll give you a really great use case of a government agency of where we've deployed real-time transcription and summarization. So the organization in question is the Department for Works and Pensions. So they outsource the Restart program to an organization called Serco. The whole purpose of that is unemployed people who are on universal credit. The aim is to try and get them back to work as soon as we can. The purpose for that is statistics have shown that if after 6 weeks they're still unemployed, the chances are they'll continue claiming universal credit and there's no ambition for them to go back to work. So in that case, it was how quickly could we get people on universal credit back to work using the, say, the Restart scheme. It's about job coaching. It's about creating CVs. So we worked with Serco, and one of the things we kind of worked with is there a way of trying to produce CVs quicker, accurate, and quicker? So when we spoke to Serco about our real-time transcription and summarization service, they said for them it was a no-brainer, because what it would allow the individuals to do is to start having conversations with the person that was unemployed and start creating CVs immediately. So what they did is they then focus on doing the interviews. At the end of the interviews, say the real-time transcription and summarization produce the CVs automatically. What that meant is those that were doing the interviews could end up doing more interviews rather than at the end of the conversation starting to create CVs, which in some cases could take up to 6 weeks to do. So in terms of productivity gains, what that meant is actually those that were managing the Restart program were able to do 2 or 3 interviews more. So that's one example. The other example is if we look in a force control room and we look in contact centers in general, 60% of the time is spent listening to conversations. If you could increase that, and actually rather than do the paperwork afterwards, you could start taking in more calls, how much more productive can you get? So that's some of the areas where we're starting to look at efficiency gains, productivity gains. Give you another example with one of our utility companies that are using RTAS right now. What they've worked out is actually they could save the equivalent of 10 heads, because rather than type notes afterwards, get the notes inaccurate, actually it's done automatically and they can start taking in more calls. So there are a number of different ways of doing it, but as I say, they're the ones we've kind of realized already. Of course, you've got other advantages too. So again, Scott touched upon this point in terms of welfare in force control rooms, in a contact center, trying to retrain staff. Look, let's be honest, who likes taking notes after a conversation? Who likes taking notes after a meeting? If you've got a system that can do that, it is accurate. All you have to do is to validate that the summary of those notes is accurate. That is going to improve productivity, is going to improve morale, means you're going to less likely to lose people in a force control room, in a contact center. So they're just some of the benefits we're seeing automatically.
Scott, thank you very much. Well, we've come up to the end of our hour and a half, which has gone really, really quickly. Scott, Shub, Dave, first of all, can I thank you very much for your very informative inputs. But thank you also to all the attendees for joining us today. But please don't forget, the webinars will be available for you to view again on demand. This sort of concludes the first series of webinars, but look out for future notifications informing you of the next series. But in the meantime, I wish everybody a really good day and enjoy the rest of it. Thank you very much indeed.
Right. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.